The kingdom of Erendor had always whispered of shadows. Deep within the forests where the sunlight dared not linger lived a woman called Lyra. To some, she was a rogue, dangerous, cunning, untamed. To others, she was a ghost, a myth that haunted the border villages. But no one truly knew her, and no one dared approach. Lyra moved like a shadow herself, silent and deliberate. Her eyes, a sharp green like the first leaves of spring, could pierce through the darkest night. She had learned to survive in a world that had branded her an outcast, surviving not just by skill, but by knowledge and instinct. Every village she passed spoke her name with a mixture of fear and awe: the Rogue. Yet beneath her reputation, Lyra carried a secret that even she did not fully understand. In her blood flowed the echo of an ancient power, one that had been forgotten by the world and feared by those who still remembered. It was this power that often drew danger to her door, and yet she could not ignore it, for it was a part of who she was. In the heart of Erendor, far from the shadowed woods, the castle of the Alpha stood tall and proud. Prince Kael, heir to the throne, was a man of both strength and charm, yet there was a weariness to him. His life was dictated by duty, politics, and expectation. The kingdom's future rested heavily on his shoulders, and even his closest advisors could not lift the weight of responsibility. Kael had always believed in order and honor. He trusted the walls of his castle to protect his family and the people of Erendor. But there were forces even he could not command. Whispers had reached him of dark magic stirring in the kingdom, a curse that threatened those he loved most. The first sign came quietly. One of the youngest princes, a boy of 6 with a smile as bright as summer, fell ill under mysterious circumstances. No healer, no charm, no prayer could ease the boy's suffering. Kael watched helplessly as the child's strength faded, a chill gripping the prince's heart. He knew that ordinary remedies were not enough. Something unnatural was at work. That night, Lyra was walking along the edge of the northern woods when she sensed danger before she saw it. The sounds of struggle reached her ears, a muffled cry, the snap of branches underfoot. She moved swiftly, her boots barely touching the ground. Through the trees, she saw a figure struggling against 3 masked men. They were larger than her, their hands rough and cruel, but the child they had captured looked terrified, helpless. Lyra's heart quickened. This was not a robbery, this was something darker. Without hesitation, she struck. Shadows seemed to gather around her, bending to her will. The attackers fell one by one, each movement of hers precise and deadly without being cruel. The child stumbled toward her, trembling. Who are you?" the boy whispered, clutching her cloak. Lyra knelt down, keeping her voice calm and gentle. "I am someone who will keep you safe. Come with me quickly." The forest swallowed them as she led the child away from danger. But even as she ran, a figure watched from the hill above, eyes sharp and calculating. Prince Kael had been riding near the forest when he heard the commotion. He had not expected to see a rogue woman appear from the shadows, saving his nephew's life. The next morning, the kingdom buzzed with whispers. The rogue had been seen aiding the prince's family. Some nobles were skeptical, others feared her even more. Who was this woman who walked freely in darkness yet appeared when most needed? Kael demanded a meeting. Lyra was reluctant, but the situation left her no choice. She entered the castle cautiously, her green eyes scanning the grand hall. Gold banners hung from the walls, and the air was thick with incense. The Alpha himself stood at the far end, tall and commanding, though the lines of worry shadowed his face. "You saved a child of my family," Kael said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Why?" Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "Because it was wrong for them to be harmed." "I do not choose sides, Prince. I only act where I must." Kael studied her. He had expected arrogance, perhaps even defiance. But there was honesty in her gaze. Something about her was different from the common thieves or spies he had dealt with before. "You are no ordinary rogue," he said slowly. "There is power in you, and you move like shadows themselves obey you." Lyra's jaw tightened. "And you are no ordinary prince. I have heard tales of your strength and cunning. But titles do not protect your family from what lurks in darkness." A silence settled between them. Neither spoke of the curse that had taken hold of the young prince, but both understood it. Their eyes met, and in that glance was a mutual acknowledgement. 2 forces, different yet drawn to the same danger, now bound together by fate. Days passed, and Kael observed Lyra from a careful distance. She did not stay in the castle unless necessary, yet her presence was felt everywhere. Guards whispered about her skill, how she could vanish from sight in the blink of an eye. Lyra, for her part, studied the castle's layout, its defenses, and its weaknesses, but not with malice. She sought answers, not chaos. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Kale found Lyra on the castle battlements. She looked out over the kingdom, silent and still, her cloak fluttering in the wind. "Do you ever sleep?" he asked, startling her slightly. Lyra turned her sharp green eyes toward him. "I sleep when the world allows me to, but some nights the shadows keep me awake." Kale approached cautiously. "The child, he is recovering, slowly, but the curse is not gone." Lyra's expression hardened. "It never leaves so easily. Dark magic has a way of following those it wants, but I can help you if you let me." Kale studied her, torn between duty and desire. He wanted to trust her, but his heart was wary. "And what do you ask in return?" Lyra's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "Nothing but a chance to stop what is coming, and perhaps a promise that you will not interfere with my freedom." Kale's chest tightened. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Freedom was her life, and he could not bind her without losing her entirely. The night grew colder, and the castle's torches flickered in the wind. Lyra and Kale did not speak again, yet an understanding hung between them. Both were aware of the danger lurking in the kingdom, the curse that could claim more than just the young prince. Both understood that their paths had crossed for a reason, one that neither could yet fully comprehend. But in the distance, in the shadowed halls of the castle, someone watched. The traitor who had unleashed the curse had seen Lyra, and now the rogue who moved like the night had become a threat. Lyra felt it first, a chill that ran along her spine. The shadows around her seemed to twitch, warning her. She had been hunted before, but this was different. This was personal. Kale, standing beside her, sensed it too. He did not need words to understand the warning in her eyes. He had faced enemies before, but he had never faced one like this. One that could twist fate itself and perhaps test the bond that had begun to form between them. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Lyra knew that her life was about to change. No longer would she walk only in the shadows. She had been seen, and now the world and the Alpha would demand something from her that she had long avoided: trust, courage, and perhaps love. And in that quiet, tension-filled moment, neither noticed the figure slipping through the castle corridors, cloaked in darkness. The game had begun, and Lyra the rogue was at the center of it. The castle of Urindor was alive with whispers, its halls echoing with fear and speculation. Lyra, the rogue who had saved the young prince, had become a figure both feared and revered. Guards spoke her name in awe, the servants in hushed tones. Even the noble council, usually so proud and composed, felt unease whenever her shadow brushed past them. Yet Lyra herself was unaffected by titles or fear. She moved through the castle like a ghost, unseen when she wished, but always observing. Her mission was clear: discover the source of the dark magic that threatened the Alpha's family and end it before it could claim more lives. Prince Kale watched her from a distance. There was something about Lyra that unsettled him, and yet drew him closer. Her independence, her skill, and the quiet intensity in her green eyes made him question everything he had known about trust, loyalty, and perhaps even love. But Kale was a prince first, and he could not allow sentiment to cloud judgment. The curse was still a threat, and the rogue's presence, no matter how helpful, was unpredictable. The first night after Lyra's arrival, the two of them met in the castle garden. The moon hung low in the sky, casting silver light over the fountains and statues. Lyra leaned against a stone balustrade, silent, watching the shadows move with a kind of awareness that made Kale's chest tighten. "You have not answered me," Kale said, stepping closer. "Why did you come to save the boy? Why not leave him to his fate?" Lyra's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Because I could not stand by while innocents suffered. That is all. I do not act for reward or for recognition or for kings, only when I see wrong." Kale frowned. "And yet you are here, working within these walls with me. That is no longer your way." A smile, small and fleeting, touched her lips. "I am not here for you, Prince. I am here for the child and to stop what is coming. But yes, I find it strange that I must work with someone like you." Kale's eyes darkened with curiosity and something deeper, something he did not yet admit even to himself. "Strange how? You represent order, I represent chaos," Lyra said softly. "We are opposites. And yet the same danger has drawn us together. That is not coincidence. It is necessity." The next day, Lyra led Kale to the edge of the forest that bordered the castle lands. The trees were dense and dark, as if they had grown to hide secrets from the world. The rogue's movements were careful, deliberate, each step silent as she guided Kale through twisting paths and over hidden streams. "You do not trust easily," Kale observed. "Even with your own life, you move alone." Lyra glanced at him. "Trust is a gift, Prince. I have learned to survive without it. The world does not care for those who wait for others to protect them." Kale's jaw tightened. He understood survival, but he also understood loyalty. Sometimes survival is not enough. Sometimes we need each other. You cannot fight every shadow alone. Lyra's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, Kale saw something he had not expected: vulnerability. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "but some battles must be faced alone, and yet there are moments when one cannot ignore what is necessary." "I suppose this is such a moment." The forest was not silent. The curse that had touched the young prince had a source, Lyra had discovered. It came from a dark heart within the kingdom, someone who wielded magic older than any king or queen dared to remember. Lyra could feel it in the air, a pulse that made the hair on her arms rise. Kale followed closely, his hand never far from the hilt of his sword. Though he had faced enemies before, he knew this was different. The darkness in these woods was alive, aware of their presence and waiting. Suddenly, a shadow moved ahead. A figure cloaked in black stepped onto the path, eyes glinting like coals. The air seemed to thicken, and the forest itself fell silent. "You seek to meddle in things beyond your understanding," the figure said, voice low and chilling. "The rogue is far from home, and the prince is foolish to follow." Lyra's hand went to the dagger at her belt, but she did not move immediately. Instead, she studied the figure, assessing strength and intent. "We are here for the child," she said calmly. "Harm him and you will answer to me." The figure laughed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "The child is but a pawn. You think to protect him, and yet you are drawn into a game far larger than you know." Kale stepped forward, anger flaring. "If you mean to threaten my family, you will regret it." The figure's eyes flicked to Kale, and for the first time Lyra noticed a shadow of doubt in the man's stance. "The prince is strong," the figure said softly. "But strength alone will not save him. It will take more courage and sacrifice than either of you understand." Before Kale could respond, the figure vanished, leaving only a swirl of leaves and the heavy scent of iron in the air. Lyra exhaled slowly. "The curse is close," she said. "We must hurry. Time is short, and the danger grows with each hour." They pressed deeper into the forest. Night fell, and the shadows grew longer, twisting like living things. Kale noticed how Lyra seemed to move without hesitation, almost as if the darkness obeyed her. Yet, despite her skill, he saw the strain in her eyes, the weight she carried, the battles she had fought alone. "Why do you do this?" Kale asked quietly, walking beside her. "Why put yourself in danger for a child who is not your own?" Lyra's gaze was fixed on the path ahead, but her voice was soft. "Because I have seen what darkness can do to innocence. I have seen it in my own past. I will not stand by while it happens again." Kale studied her, a flicker of admiration and something more passing through him. "You are remarkable." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Flattery from a prince, I would almost believe you were sincere." He met her gaze, and the forest seemed to fade around them. "I am sincere," he said, the honesty in his voice unguarded. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met. I do not know if I can trust you completely, but I want to." The rogue's smile faltered just slightly. "Trust is not given lightly," she said. "Perhaps one day, if the world allows it." They reached a clearing, the moonlight spilling across a small pool of water. Here, the pulse of the dark magic was stronger. The air was heavy, almost alive, pressing against their skin. Lyra knelt and placed her hand on the ground, murmuring words that seemed to twist with the wind. Kale watched, fascinated and wary. Shadows gathered, forming shapes that slithered across the clearing. Yet Lyra moved without fear, her own presence pushing back the darkness, bending it to her will. "The curse is old," Lyra said. "It feeds on fear, on pain, on the doubts of those it touches. And it is clever. It will not attack directly, but through weakness, through distraction, through trust betrayed." Kale's heart clenched. "Then we must be careful. One mistake, and it could destroy my family." Lyra nodded. "We must be ready to act together, even if it is uncomfortable. I cannot do this alone. And Kale, neither can you." The moment hung between them, heavy with meaning. They were two forces, different yet aligned by necessity, drawn together by fate and danger. Neither could deny the pull, the tension, the spark that had begun in the castle garden and followed them into the darkness. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, and a creature emerged from the darkness. Its form was twisted, a blend of smoke and bone, and its eyes glowed with a malevolent light. Cale drew his sword, but Lyra stepped forward. "Let me," she said, voice calm but firm. "This is mine to face." Cale hesitated, torn between his instinct to protect and his trust in her skill. Lyra moved with fluid grace, weaving around the creature, striking at its core with precise, almost dance-like movements. The shadows hissed and recoiled, but she did not falter. Cale watched, awe and fear warring within him. She was incredible, strong, fearless, cunning. And yet beneath her strength he sensed vulnerability. She fought not just for survival, but for something deeper, something she rarely showed. The creature let out a final, piercing cry before dissolving into the night, leaving only silence and the soft rustle of leaves. Lyra sank to her knees, breathing heavily, her hands trembling slightly. Cale moved to her side without thinking, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You are extraordinary," he said softly. Lyra looked at him, green eyes glinting with something unreadable. "Extraordinary, perhaps," she said, "but not invincible. Remember that, Prince. Darkness is patient, and it is not done with us yet." They returned to the castle at dawn, the first rays of sunlight spilling over the walls. Both were silent, lost in thought. Cale realized he had come to rely on her more than he expected, while Lyra knew that the rogue and the prince were now bound together in a way neither could escape. But far in the shadows of the castle, eyes watched them. The traitor, the true source of the curse, had noted their progress. The rogue had proven herself, but the real challenge was yet to come. The castle of Urindor was unusually quiet that night. The usual chatter of guards and servants had been replaced by an eerie stillness, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Lyra paced in the shadowed hallways, her green eyes sharp, her thoughts racing. The events in the forest still lingered in her mind, the twisted creature, the pulse of dark magic, the knowledge that the curse was far stronger than she had imagined. She had fought alone before. She had faced danger, betrayal, and the harsh judgment of the world. But this was different. This curse was personal, touching the young prince and threatening the Alpha's family, and it was tied to her. She could feel it in her blood, in the strange warmth that lingered beneath her skin whenever the darkness drew near. Cale found her near the northern tower, where the moonlight fell like silver water through the tall windows. He watched her quietly for a moment before speaking. "You are thinking too much," he said softly. Lyra didn't turn. "Thinking is all I can do. The curse, it is connected to me. I can feel it. I know that if I confront it, it will demand more than just skill. It will demand a part of me, perhaps the part I have tried to hide for so long." Cale stepped closer, his presence commanding yet gentle. "You are not alone. You do not have to face this by yourself." Lyra finally looked at him, her eyes reflecting both fear and determination. "You do not understand. This is not just a fight. If I fail, the consequences, they will not be limited to the child or even your family. It could reach farther into the entire kingdom." Cale placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, steadying her. "Then we face it together, whatever it takes. You have already risked so much for us. Now let me stand by your side." Her chest tightened at his words. She wanted to believe him, to let him in, yet her life had been shaped by solitude. Trust was not something she could offer lightly. The next day, Lyra and Cale prepared to journey to the old ruins beyond the western hills. The ruins were said to hold remnants of the magic that fueled the curse. It was a place forgotten by most, avoided because of the shadows that seemed to live within the broken stones. As they traveled, Cale noticed how Lyra moved, alert to every sound, every shift of the wind. She had a grace and awareness that made even him cautious. "You are remarkable," he said quietly. "No one moves like you, no one sees the world like you do." Lyra glanced at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I survive by seeing what others cannot, that is all." Cale frowned, though he did not push further. There was something in her words that felt like both truth and shield. She did not reveal more than necessary, and yet he sensed there was a story beneath her calm exterior, a story of loss, of pain, and perhaps of betrayal. By the time they reached the ruins, the sun had dipped low, and the shadows of the broken walls stretched like fingers across the ground. The air was thick with magic, a pulsing energy that set the hairs on their arms on end. Lyra knelt in the center of a crumbled stone circle, placing her hands on the cold earth. "The source is here," she whispered, "but it is stronger than I anticipated. The curse has grown because it feeds on fear, doubt, and anger. It will test us, Cale. Not just physically, but in ways of the heart and mind." Kale watched, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Then we must be ready. Whatever it demands, we face it together. Lyra nodded, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of worry. Together, she repeated, almost to convince herself. The ruins were silent for a while, but the quiet was broken by a low hum, almost like a whispering chant. Shadows gathered, rising from the cracks in the stone like dark smoke. Shapes moved, twisting into forms that seemed almost human, yet terrible and unnatural. Kale stepped forward, sword raised, but Lyra held up her hand. "No, let me." She moved with a fluid grace, weaving through the shadows with precision. Her voice rose in low, commanding tones, calling on powers Kale did not fully understand. The shadows recoiled, twisted, and reshaped as though responding to her will. Kale watched, his heart pounding, not from fear but from awe. The rogue, the outcast, was not merely fighting. She was negotiating with the darkness itself. Every strike, every gesture, seemed part of a dance older than the kingdom. Kale realized that Lyra's power was not just skill. It was her essence, a part of her being that she had long kept hidden from the world. After what seemed like hours, the shadows finally dissipated, leaving only the faint echo of their movement in the wind. Lyra sank to her knees, breathing heavily. Her hands trembled slightly, though she did not falter. Kale moved to her side instinctively, offering a steadying hand. "You were incredible," he said softly. Lyra met his gaze, her eyes green and intense. "Incredible or foolish?" she asked. "The curse is not gone. This was only a test, and I cannot deny what it asks of me next. It will demand a sacrifice, something I may not be willing to give." Kale's chest tightened. "Then we decide together what must be given. I will not let you face this alone." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You do not understand. Some sacrifices cannot be shared. Some battles are mine alone, even if I wish otherwise." Kale's eyes searched hers, filled with concern and growing affection. "I want to trust you. I want to believe in you, but you must let me. You cannot bear everything yourself." Lyra looked away, her thoughts spinning. She had lived her life alone, always hiding, always surviving. To let Kale in, to trust him, to rely on him, was a risk she was not sure she could take. And yet, the pull between them, the tension that had begun in the castle garden, was undeniable. That night, as they camped near the ruins, the wind carried whispers that seemed almost alive. Lyra could feel the pulse of the curse, faint but present, threading through the air like invisible vines. She knew that confronting it fully would require more than skill. It would demand courage, selflessness, and a willingness to face the deepest part of herself. Kale sat beside her, watching the fire. "You have carried so much," he said quietly. "Perhaps it is time to let someone carry it with you." Lyra shook her head. "No, I cannot, not entirely. The curse, it is tied to me. If I fail, it will be worse than death." Kale reached out, placing a hand over hers. "Then let me be here. Let me stand with you, even if I cannot bear it all. You are not alone." For a moment, the rogue considered it. The rogue who had faced shadows and death, the rogue who had trusted no one, she felt a flicker of something she had long denied, hope, and perhaps something more. The next morning they returned to the castle, but unease shadowed every step. The castle felt different, as though it had sensed the shift in the world outside its walls. Whispers spoke of movement in the corridors, someone watching, waiting for the right moment. Lyra's instincts were sharp, her senses alert. "The curse is gaining strength," she warned Kale. "And the one behind it is clever. They have noticed us. They are waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike." Kale's jaw tightened. "Then we prepare. Whatever it takes, we protect the family and the kingdom." Lyra nodded, though she felt the weight of the choice she would soon have to make. The curse would demand something of her, something personal, something she feared. She had saved the young prince once, but the darkness had not yet revealed its full intentions. That night, Lyra stood on the battlements alone, the cold wind tugging at her cloak. She looked over the kingdom, the castle, the forests, and the hills. The world was quiet, yet the pulse of danger was constant. Her thoughts drifted to Kale, to the child, to the growing connection she felt with the prince. Could she trust him? Could she let him see the truth of her powers, the history she had hidden, the sacrifices she would have to make? She had lived in shadows, relying on herself alone. To step into the light, to risk everything, was frightening. And yet, the pull of destiny was stronger than fear. The rogue had been chosen, whether by fate or by the curse itself, to stand at the center of the coming storm. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if she could face it not alone, but with someone who had begun to matter to her, someone who had earned a place beside her. even if only in this temporary alliance the castle of Urindor had never felt so heavy. Shadows clung to the corners, and the usual bustle of servants and guards was replaced with a tense silence. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath, as if they knew that the fate of the kingdom hung in balance. Lyra stood at the top of the northern tower, the wind tugging at her cloak. The pulse of the curse was stronger now, a dark heartbeat that resonated through the stones of the castle and into the heart of the kingdom. She could feel it in her blood, in the muscles of her arms, in the quickening of her pulse. This was the moment she had feared and prepared for, a confrontation with the darkness she had long sensed but never fully faced. Cale approached quietly, his boots muffled by the thick carpet of the tower hall. His eyes were serious, filled with concern and an unspoken question. Could they survive this? "You don't have to face it alone," he said, stopping a few steps behind her. His voice was steady, but there was urgency beneath the calm. Lyra turned, her green eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I know, but this is not something that can be shared entirely. The curse, it is bound to me. It tests the heart, the spirit. It will ask for more than either of us can imagine." Cale stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then we face it together, whatever it asks. I trust you, Lyra, and I am not afraid to stand beside you." For a brief moment, the rogue felt something she had almost forgotten, hope. And maybe something more, trust, fragile but real, growing between them. The air grew colder as they descended into the castle's dungeons, where the darkness was thickest. The curse had made its home there, twisting the walls, the stones, and even the shadows into shapes that were almost alive. Whispers echoed from the corners, low and chilling, as if the darkness was speaking to them. Lyra's hand went to the dagger at her belt, but Cale placed his hand lightly on hers. "We do this together," he said, and she nodded. The first manifestation of the curse appeared as they reached the heart of the dungeon. A shadowed figure, tall and indistinct, eyes glowing like molten gold. It moved with purpose, its voice a hiss of ancient anger. "You think you can confront me?" it said. "The rogue of shadows, the prince of men, you are nothing but pawns." Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "I am not a pawn, and this kingdom is not yours to destroy. Leave now or be undone." The shadow laughed, a sound like breaking stone. "Bold, brave, foolish. You will see what sacrifice truly means." Cale tightened his grip on his sword, but Lyra held up a hand. "No, this is mine," she said. "I will face what I must. You stay close, but do not interfere unless I call." Cale studied her, worry etched on his face. "Be careful," he whispered. Lyra knelt in the center of the dungeon, placing her hands on the cold stone floor. She whispered words in a language older than any in Urindor, her voice soft but carrying a power that vibrated through the very walls. Shadows gathered around her, twisting and writhing as if alive, yet they hesitated, reluctant to touch her. The curse recognized her. It pulsed, seeking fear, doubt, and weakness, but Lyra did not falter. Her thoughts went to the child she had saved, to Cale, and to the kingdom itself. She drew strength from them, from the bond that had formed with the Alpha, from the responsibility she could no longer ignore. The shadow lunged suddenly, but Lyra met it head-on. The clash of dark and light echoed through the dungeon. She moved with precision, striking with her dagger, calling upon the power within her. The shadows hissed and twisted, but she held her ground. Cale watched, awe and fear mingling in his chest. She was incredible, more than a rogue, more than a warrior. She was a force of nature, harnessing the darkness without being consumed by it. And yet he sensed the cost of her struggle, the toll it took on her body and spirit. Hours seemed to pass as Lyra battled the curse. Every strike, every whisper of power brought her closer to the edge. She could feel it reaching into her mind, testing her resolve, probing for weakness. And then she saw it, the core of the darkness, a twisted manifestation of the curse itself. It was an entity of shadows, pulsing with anger and hunger. Lyra's heart pounded. To destroy it, she would have to give a part of herself, her strength, her essence, perhaps even a piece of her freedom. Cale stepped forward. "Lyra, she shook her head. "No, this is my choice. Whatever happens, I must do it myself. You have already stood by me, and that is enough." Cale's eyes filled with conflict, but he stepped back, watching her, ready to act if needed. Lyra took a deep breath and focused all her energy, all her will, into one final strike. She whispered words of binding and light, calling upon the hidden power in her blood. The shadows screamed, twisting violently before collapsing inward, drawn into her control. The dungeon trembled, stones cracking under the force of the magic. And then, silence. Lyra collapsed to her knees, exhausted but alive. The darkness was gone, absorbed and transformed, leaving only faint traces of shadow that flickered weakly in the corners. Cale rushed to her side. "You did it," he said, voice trembling. "You saved them. You saved us." Lyra smiled weakly, her green eyes glowing faintly with the remnants of power. "It is done for now. The curse is broken, but it has changed me. I feel it within me still." Cale helped her to her feet, steadying her. "Then we face it together. You are no longer alone, Lyra." "Not ever." Her chest tightened at his words. She had lived her life trusting no one, relying only on herself. But standing there, looking into Cale's unwavering eyes, she realized something profound. She did not have to be alone. The young prince, now fully recovered, ran to Lyra when she returned to the castle's courtyard. "Thank you, you saved me," he exclaimed, his smile bright and innocent. Lyra knelt to meet his gaze. "You are safe," she said softly, "and that is what matters." Cale watched from nearby, his chest swelling with admiration and something deeper. The rogue, the woman who had walked alone through darkness and danger, had not only saved his family but had also changed the course of the kingdom. That evening in the great hall the court gathered. Whispers filled the room as the Alpha stepped forward, the rogue at his side. Cale's voice was steady and commanding. "This woman," he said, gesturing to Lyra, "is no longer a shadow at the edge of our kingdom. She is a hero, the one who saved my family and faced the darkness that threatened us all. She has proven herself more loyal, more brave, and more capable than many who hold titles or crowns." The nobles murmured, some still skeptical, others awed. But Lyra's gaze met Cale's, and in that silent moment everything was understood. Titles and rumors no longer mattered. Trust had been forged in fire, in shadow, and in courage. That night, Cale and Lyra stood on the castle battlements, the wind tugging at their cloaks. The moon shone brightly, reflecting off the silver river that cut through the kingdom. "You are different now," Cale said softly. "Not just because of the curse, but because of yourself. You have faced what most could not, and you have grown stronger for it." Lyra smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but strength alone does not change who we are. It is the choices we make, the people we trust, and the courage to face what is inside that truly transforms us." Cale's hand brushed hers, a simple touch but filled with meaning. "Then we face everything together. You and I, no more shadows between us." Her heart beat faster. The rogue who had walked alone for so long, feeling something she had never allowed herself to feel before: belonging, trust, and perhaps even love. Far in the north, beyond the mountains and forests, shadows stirred once more. Though the curse had been broken, the world remained full of danger, magic, and secrets yet to be discovered. But Lyra and Cale, together, would face whatever came next. They had survived the darkness, saved the kingdom, and forged a bond that could withstand any shadow. The rogue, once feared and misunderstood, now stood beside the Alpha, not as a servant or a pawn, but as an equal, a protector, and a force to be reckoned with. And the kingdom, too, had changed, its heart stronger for the courage of one who had walked in shadows and one who had chosen to trust her. Cliffhanger for the story's end. Yet whispers of distant darkness remained. The rogue had transformed, the Alpha had learned the power of trust, and the kingdom had been forever changed. And somewhere in the north, shadows waited, hinting that the adventure, the tests, and the romance were far from over.